Okay, hi grade 10s. I just want to go through the summary table that you would have gotten as notes and which is uploaded onto Google Classroom. So this is what the table looks like. It consists of 6 pages. So this is what I would have handed to you in class. I would have printed it for you. And I like things to be categorized. So I've got the first column is the organelle or part of the cell, the structure thereof, the function thereof, and a diagram. So either you asked to label the diagram and maybe draw the diagram. So in the first part, we are going to look at protoplasm, and I've already discussed membranes with you in the lesson video, and then also the cytoplasm. Then we're going to look at, in the next lesson, nucleus and mitochondria. Then we're going to look at endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi body, and ribosomes because they work together. So all of those structures are found in plant and animal cells. Then structures only in plant cells, the cell wall and vacuoles. And another lesson, the plastids. Now we know a little bit about chloroplasts, but grade 10, you're going to learn about chromo and leucoplasts. And then the last two cellular structures are the lysosomes and the centrioles, which are only found in animal cells. And the centriole is not even mentioned in your textbook, so the notes are over here. So you need to add to these notes. Now, because we're on lockdown, okay, I want to show you what the model looks like. So I'm going to, you need to have a look at it now and then fill in your own table, okay? So on page 42, they mention the word protoplasm. Now, protoplasm, it's not a word I often use. It's the living contents of the cell. So the cytoplasm with all the organelles and the nucleus, the controlling center of the cell. And, you know, the cytoplasm is a colloid. It's a jelly-like substance. It's like when you make jelly, it's protein in water. The protein molecules are big. They don't dissolve. It forms a jelly-like colloid. And obviously, this is where all the chemical reactions of the cell takes place, in the cytoplasm or in the actual organelles, okay? Now, the membranes that we looked at in the first video, in my lesson video, I mentioned that a cell membrane surrounds the cytoplasm, and synonyms are plasma membrane or plasmalemma. All right, and then you've got all the membranes that surround the organelles, the other organelles. So it forms the outer boundary of the cell membrane, and we call it, it's a lipid bilayer, and the theory used to describe it is the fluid mosaic model. So you can look at the notes on page 42, summarize your own notes, but these are the main parts. And you were asked to label this diagram. So I want you to try to do it by yourself first. So there's the lipid bilayer with those phospholipid molecules facing each other. Now, if you remember, the little phosphate heads, they don't mind being next to the water or watery areas. So if this is a part of a cell, if this is a cell and there's part of the cell membrane, there it is. So these phospholipids on the outer layer of lipid molecules don't mind being next to the exterior of the cell. Around the cell is the tissue fluid, okay? And the other ones, these ones here, they don't mind being next to the cytoplasm or cell cytosol, which contains up to 70% water. So they are high, these phosphate heads are hydrophilic, and the fatty acid chains in the middle of these phospholipid molecules are hydrophobic. And then you've also asked to label the proteins. So there could be channel proteins or proteins passing through the whole cell membrane or halfway through or only on the surface. Maybe that one there. And then there are proteins with sugars attached, and they're called glycoproteins. And then there are those little cholesterol molecules in between, making sure that those lipid molecules aren't too far apart in hot weather or too close in cold weather. But keeping the fluidity of the membrane constant. Now, I've asked some questions here. So as stated in that video, you know, the cell membrane, I was punching holes, little holes in this little piece of paper showing that, you know, cell membranes are differentially permeable. Only small molecules can pass through. So what can move into or out of cells? Okay, so water, nutrients like glucose and amino acids and salts, all right? Then they can go into and out of the organelles in the cell. So carbon dioxide will go into chloroplast of plant cells. Oxygen will go into mitochondria, and waste and water will move out of organelles and out of cells, okay? Extra water. And then there's all those other membranes. So all the membranes forming the different organelles of the cell. The nuclear membrane, Golgi body, ER, mitochondria, chloroplast, vesicles. All right, so all structures inside a cell, or organelles inside a cell surrounded by membranes, but then there's also the cell membrane surrounding the whole cell. And then I said you also draw a simple diagram of a section through a membrane and label. So there's the phospholipid bilayer, the sugar, the phosphate glycerol head, the hydrophobic fatty acid chain, the proteins either halfway through, all the way through, or on the surface, and some of them are glycoproteins, and then you've got the cholesterol molecules in between. Just depends how you get asked this. You know, you could be asked to label or explain using a diagram. Now, I've said here, because in your textbook, straight after this, cell membranes, it talks about transport in cells, so osmosis and diffusion, which we did in grade 9, and something new, active transport. So I will go through the section at the end of cells, especially for our new pupils who maybe have not talked about cell diffusion and osmosis before, and we'll revise that whole process there. But first I want to look at all the structures in cells. Now, the last little bit for today, so on page 45 of your textbook, there's quite a nice summary of what the cytoplasm of a cell is like. It's not going to have color. You know, plant cells, green plant cells are green because of the chlorophyll in them, but cells don't have color. So they've got a jelly-like transparent substance. So think of jelly that you make, colorless, and the cell membrane around it. And that jelly-like substance is mainly made of water and inorganic molecules like proteins and fats and amino acids and other inorganic molecules. So water plus, there could be oxygen, carbon dioxide, and mineral salts or salts, and etc. Okay. So the function of that cytoplasm, that's where the organelles are suspended. Think of taking sweets, jelly tots, Smarties, and suspending them in a bowl of jelly. That's the organelles. And maybe a squash ball to represent the nucleus. I had to mention that. Okay, so cytoplasm is where all the reactions take place either in the cytoplasm or in the actual organelles. And you learn a little bit more about that as we go on through until grade 12. All right, and then it also talks about the cytoplasm, you know, because it contains a lot of water, that it acts as a solvent. So water dissolves sugars and salts and gases. It's a transport medium for all these molecules to move across the cell, like oxygen into the chloroplast and CO2, oxygen into mitochondria and CO2 out of mitochondria. And it also stores molecules. So there could be fat droplets, lipid droplets like in peanut cells, or starch granules in plant parts that store starch. Okay. All right, so that's what I want to talk about today. And then in the next lesson, we'll look at the nucleus and the mitochondria.